about 18 months ago, 19 months ago, I became a father. So the biggest title that I now hold as a father is being a dad. I'm running again, like I did in 2010 and 2012 for the same reasons. I think there's room in a council of 5 for a different voice. I think a lot of the young working families in this community don't really get their voices heard a lot of times. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running. I think I can bring a different perspective to the city council and just bring a different energy and tackle the problems that we have in the city, not for immediate solutions, but looking for the long-term solutions for the problems that we have in the city that I have right now. Thank you.
Mr. Hanlon.
Hi, I'm Bill Hanlon, and thank y'all for coming. And before I forget, I need to take a picture of you all. Smile. Thank you. My wife wouldn't believe me if I told her. Like I said, I'm Bill Hanlon. I'm a husband to an angel. I've got a brilliant daughter. I'm a Vietnam vet. I'm a businessman, and most of all, a community volunteer. I received proclamations from the federal agency, Rancho Cucamonga, 2 from the county and Rocky Brush State Senator for my work with veterans and with senior citizens. I work with museums in our city for 30 years, and I've also worked at a paleontology museum for 13 years giving tours to little kids. I'm instrumental in getting the VETRA program changed and starting Freedom Courtyard. As a businessman, I've worked closely with major corporations including Honda, Amgen, and Berger Brunswick. What I bring to the table is determination to put a cap on our out-of-control salaries and keep within the budget so that our children will not have a city that's gone broke. I'll work within the framework of a team, but as an individual representing the voters and not a yes man. And again, thank you all for the picture.
Mr. Alexander.
Good evening. I'm glad that we have built up a little bit of crowd here. It's good tonight to see everybody. For those of you who don't know, my name is Bill Alexander. I've served the city quite a long period of time in a position of representation. Started out as a representative of the fire board many years ago, ultimately the city council, and then for 12 years as mayor. I was retired by the voters in 2006, but I came back in 2010. I've served the last 4 years on the city council. Probably in my particular capacity, what I offer more than anything is personal contact and always the ability to follow up the community, because in the pecking order we have, the reality is you're the boss, and from there it flows downhill. Who's responsible to who? It's tough to explain all these things in 1 minute, but I've enjoyed my time back on city council tremendously. I've enjoyed representation and getting out and seeing the public. I'm a little more blue collar than some, but I wear that as a badge of honor. We're having an economic condition not right now in the United States where it's difficult for a lot of people to get by. And I think any representation has to reflect a really concern for those people less fortunate than some of the rest of us. So we thank you for being here and look forward to the rest of the evening.
Mrs. Williams.
Hi. I also want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I wish the crowd was a little bigger, actually, with all these extra chairs, but hoping you all will home and tell your friends. So, I'm Diane Williams, and I'm honored to serve on the council since 1990. And I've seen some amazing changes in our beautiful city in that time. I can honestly say I was lucky enough to have been part of most of those changes, and I take great pride in the city that we've become. We're a city where families come to raise their children, and then they stay on to retirement. So that to me says a lot about the quality of our city. My original reason for running for city council was to advocate for the city to pull out of the San Diego County library system and start our own city library services. We did this in Rancho Cucamonga fashion last year. We did so well through our great staff that we won the National Medal of Honor for museums and libraries. So did was the right thing to do. A lot of said tonight about passions. I have a lot of married passions. As a library owner, my husband and I created the Friends of the Library bookstore, and looking now at what it has become is a source of huge pride. Being passionate about the Pacific Electric Trail. There's also the freeway, which, by the way, wasn't here. Can you imagine? No freeway? Maybe a little quieter, but it would certainly be less efficient. I've also been privileged to be part of the Metrolink, and the list goes on. I've been active in marketing the city to employers to bring jobs and different kinds of businesses here. We work with developers to bring different varied housing so that everyone can have a house they can afford. Also, during the rough times, we were very intense on being part of having teams to go out to cities, to businesses that were having trouble, and we created these business retention teams. And I'm very proud of those because we were successful. And one thing that the city has done, I think, very well is to reach out to their small businesses.
Dr. Kennedy.
Welcome, everyone. Time is a very valuable commodity, and I thank you for being here and investing some time with us this evening. I've been married for 37 years to a wonderful man by the name of Michael. We've lived in Rancho Cucamonga for 34 years. This is my home. This is my community. And what I will bring to the council when elected is, first of all, strong faith, Christian values. There are times when we're going to make decisions. Some are going to be very easy. Others will be more difficult. And I will need to seek wisdom and counsel in making those decisions. The second thing is a strong business advocacy. I support new businesses, existing businesses, the opportunity to look for new, unique businesses that will bring a highly skilled workforce and families that can afford to live and work in our city. My husband comes from a long line of business owners since 1960. He's currently a business owner. He's a senior partner in a Stone Kennedy law firm. And finally, proven leadership that I will bring. 36 years in education, leadership as a teacher, writing curriculum for students throughout the district, leadership as a principal. I was principal of Rancho Cucamonga Middle School, changing that culture and building leadership capacity among teachers, and finally as a superintendent, overseeing thousands of employees, millions of dollars in budget, and making sure that that proven leadership will be used effectively to bring about a better, stronger community in Rancho.
Ms. Reyes.
Good evening. Fellow residents, my name is Beck Moniz, and I'm running for asking for your vote on the record report. As for myself, I'll swing no bull, as you've seen some of my campaign signs. I'm a native Californian. I was born in East Los Angeles. I shined shoes and sold newspapers on the corner of Whittier and Lena. And as a young boy, I learned what the value of a buck meant. I have lived in Rancho Cucamonga for 24 years. My whole family grew up there, and I brought up my children. They all went to school at the schools here. I graduated in '63 from St. John Bosco in Bellflower, and '73 from Cal State Los Angeles, earning degrees in social sciences and also in international development. In 1965, I joined the United States Marine Corps, and I served until 1978. I also served with the Air Wing, I served with artillery, and I served with recon. Since 1973, I've spent the majority of my 40-year career in the geotechnical and heavy industrial construction fields, plus public service and also in education. My work involves the siting of nuclear generating facilities, building refineries, petrochemical plants, and mining plants as well. And I've also matriculated in the field of safety and health and the environmental disciplines. Most importantly, during my career, I was involved in estimating, budgeting, cost control, and scheduling major multi-million-dollar projects. As Deputy Chief of Cal OSHA, responsible for all enforcement activities, I turned into Department of Invasion the entire budget for the Department of Industrial Relations, which included all labor departments. So I'm no novice to budgeting, and I am also currently licensed in the field of engineering, construction. I am board certified by the American Board of Industrial Hygiene and Board of Certified Safety Professionals. I have teaching credentials in the field of safety and health and also in the environment.
Can the city council effectively negotiate a fair and arm's-length contract with the public employee unions, considering that these unions have been among the largest contributors to city council and mayoral candidates?
Well, the short answer to that is no. But let me start by saying this. I am a proud Democrat. I believe in the workers having the right to unionize and to organize. I believe that workers have the right to collective bargain for their pay and for their benefits, and also that workers have a right to a pension so they can retire with dignity. Because let's face it, Social Security by itself is never going to cut it. But having said that, basically what we're talking about are public safety unions. We're talking about fire and county sheriffs. At one point in the life of this union, they decided that they wanted to be more than just advocates for the workers, but they decided they wanted to be political players in the political system. So they have contributed heavily to a lot of candidates. They have contributed heavily to a lot of candidates for city council and mayor and also the county. Can you say that they can sit down and negotiate in good faith with the city council? I would like to think so. But I'm also not naive enough to believe that that's going to happen. And there's a way around this. It's not just bringing this up every 2 years in this election cycle. We can change this and limit the effect that certain unions have and developers and other special interests have in our city by putting campaign limits. If you limit the amount of people get from a certain group, you will limit their political influence. Thank you.
Mr. Hamlin, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Mr. Hamlin?
The word fair befuddles me a lot. What is fair to one might not be fair to another. The facts of history have already addressed the subject. If the member of the city council benefit from negotiations, then it would be logical to say no, and it wouldn't be fair. The case in point is the fire machine, who contributes large sums of money to each election, and they wish a raise, and it affects the retirement of the seated council members. Then the council members get a raise, as they have every year, in good times and bad. We end up with 22 fire chiefs and only 7 firehouses. Is this fair? But at the same time, if those who formed the union out of fear of the top-heavy management and have not gotten raises for 4+ years, then the city council can certainly hold on that arm's length. Again, the facts of history have already spoken to this subject. Is this fair? Thank you.
Mr. Alexander?
Wow, I tend to agree with a little bit and disagree with some also. You know, the question being the largest contributors to the council, mayor, and mayoral candidates, can we separate ourselves from any contributions in making decisions? Well, let me tell you, if we can't, we don't deserve beyond city council. It's really not sometimes the employee's fault that they receive wages, benefits that are excessive. It's people who vote. And I don't mind telling you, when this came up during the last budget session, I voted no. It still came up and passed, but I voted no. And you know what? I didn't get a lot of criticism from people who were organized in unions. Actually, the reality is some of them understand that wages have gone sky high, and it was a degree of respect. We have to learn to say no. We're the governing body representing you. The tail doesn't wag the dog. The buck stops right here. But I want to go a little bit further. I hope you don't mind. You can stop me if you want. This whole issue of money in the city goes much farther than public safety. There are several positions that receive excessively high pay and benefits, and that really needs to be curtailed. There's no doubt about that. But I'm going to tell you right now, we've got a lot of people that are sitting at the top of this particular organization who have all the benefits, that have all the access to a job that has security beyond most people in the private sector, and yet we're paying out $250, $275, $300 $200,000, $325,000, and more in compensation and benefits, and that's wrong. We can't continue to do that. There's going to be a reason sometimes why public safety is expensive, particularly at the worker level, because quite honestly, overtime is demanded, and you can't hire extra employees. It's not cost effective. Sometimes overtime is just necessary. But what we have forgotten is the biggest part of what is going to bring this community back. And that's the worker bees that are being relegated to the bottom, volunteers that are being relegated to the bottom. We've taken away a lot of the benefits from people who receive little or no compensation and who work part-time. And what do? We reduce them even more, and that is wrong. The city owes something to the workers in this community, and we're going to have to curtail a lot of the effective pay raises to the very highest. And that's coming soon. Thank you.
Mrs. Williams?
First of all, city council does not negotiate with labor organizations. That's done with the negotiator. And yes, they are given parameters to work within. City council does set the budget and does look at how much we feel we can or cannot, use for employees. We are, by the way, one of the few cities that is totally funded for our pensions. We have unfunded pensions. We, all new employees pay their regular pensions. We've changed the structure of, we've changed the structure of how people pay for the pension and the medical care. I know we're taking great pains to be fair and equitable to the city's employees. I believe we have the greatest staff in any city. Our city staff has been commended for their efforts during this past bad recession to sit back and, yes, they did, some of them didn't get raises for several years. Finally, we needed the administration did not as well. Anyway, they sat back, they took tougher jobs as maybe a job next to them was eliminated, as someone left, was not refilled, so they worked harder. Now times are coming back, we're getting on our economic feet again, and I think it's only fair that we reward these employees with better pay and if we can. And so they are starting to get raises again, and I hope we continue in the future.
Dr. Kennedy?
First of all, I'd like to thank and acknowledge the men and women who serve and protect this community. We all benefit from their hard work and dedication. I believe that our safety and fire departments are models throughout Southern California. That being said, yes, absolutely, I can negotiate at arm's length with the unions. The reason why I know I can do this is my experience and training as a chief negotiator, my understanding of negotiations and contracts, and more importantly, because these people are professionals. They want what we want. They want to attract the best and brightest workforce. They want to be competitive, to retain a quality, highly skilled workforce. And they want a solvent, fiscally sound budget. No one benefits from bankruptcy. So we all want that. And I think by working together, responsibly and collaboratively, we can make decisions in the best interest of the city without being influenced.
Mr. Reyes?
In answer to your question, no. Not with President Baker of the City Council. I believe that the well-being of the city may find itself on the brink of bankruptcy or facing major reductions in services, if not a too distant future. The only way to turn this abysmal future around is to elect individuals who are not afraid of making decisions, budgetary and policy decisions that are not status quo. Going along with special interests to get along just when you get new fiscal policies, controls that have to be introduced and then enacted in such a way to affect what we as elected officials need to remember. The will and needs of the residents and the businesses in this fine community come first and foremost. Good elected officials cannot be afraid of asking questions on issues that are brought to them by their constituents. If we not serve for the benefit of all residents of Rancho Cucamonga, then we have no business being on the city council. As far as the city council is concerned, it has to be unburdened by special interests, and that is what I found. Currently, you have 5 bargaining units within the city. Those bargaining units consist of San Bernardino Public Employees Association, non-supervisory and public employees, Rancho Cucamonga Employees Association, the general supervisory and professional and mid-management employees, and then we have the firefighters, 108 employees, where millions of dollars are expended in city funds. You have the Fire Support Services Association, who takes care of non-management and non-safety fire district employees. You have the Rancho Cucamonga Firefighters Local, number 2274, which handles non-management and safety employees. And then last, you have the Fire Management Employee Group Management Employees, which handle safety and non-safety. The current city council and management continue to give the firefighters everything they ask for, and do require justification and don't require justification for expenditures. Management is simply not qualified to handle the major labor problem. An example is the salaries that I have here. I'll show it to you, folks. Millions of dollars in expenditures. They're highlighted now. The overtime expenditures for battalion chiefs and chiefs almost double their base salaries. That's unconscionable, folks. You can't let that continue on. In addition, I have here also a thing for a purchase order for a new ladder truck. No justification was made for that truck, and we spent over $1 million for it. What happened to the old ladder truck? What was wrong with the old ladder truck? There was nothing wrong with the old truck on the ladder truck, other than they quoted some NFPA regulation to justify its purchase. And nobody within the city council or management questioned it. I'm saying you've got to have some budgetary compliance here. You've got to have somebody overseeing their activities. And that's where I'll leave it at that.
Just a very slight format change. It seems foolish to ask all 6 of you about repeating the question. So I'll state the question for the first candidate and the 4th candidate, and of course, if anywhere in between you'd like to do that, we'll do it that way. For the 4th candidate, primarily for the audience who doesn't have the benefit of having all the questions written down in front of them like everybody else up there. That our next question, we will start with Mr. Alexander. Mr. Alexander, are there any city services that you believe could be outsourced to private entities to achieve better results or cost savings?
Interestingly enough, we actually already outsource, for those of you that aren't aware of it. I know the certain individuals may have problems with it, but we actually outsource for the collection of waste management in the community. There are other cities that don't, that are paying up to twice as much for the same service. We outsource landscaping maintenance, street districts and maintenance for our streets. The ambulance service we have, which other communities may have their own municipal ambulance services, we contract for. They do an excellent job. And whether you consider it or not, our police force, in many ways, is outsourced because we contract with the County of San Bernardino, and I might add they are doing a very, very good job, and they're saving us money too. We have different types of hazardous materials abatement and disposal. You know, that has to be considered somewhat outsourcing. Mutual aid agreements, which are held with emergency services, are another form of outsourcing that the fire service has entered into and does save the city money. However, there's personal pride in people who work for this community. And there's a lot of good people, and I'm talking about the worker bees in this community, that take a tremendous amount of pride in caring for the community. Many times, much more so than simply a person who's contracted and has no vested interest in what this community looks like. There's a lot of people that actually live here and work here. There's kids go to school here, and they want to see the city the finest city around. I don't think I would really try to get over outsourced, to be quite honest with you. It so happens that in most cases, in outsourcing, we always relegate that, unfortunately, to the lowest paid jobs and not the highest paid jobs. I don't want to see that continue. I want to see those people in our community right now that are working for us have a place like they feel like to stay, work in the community, take pride in the community, and hopefully retire.
Mrs. Williams.
Rancho Cucamonga is what's known as a contract city, meaning we contract out for many services. The mayor mentioned a list of them, so I won't repeat it. The mayor, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, I go back to the district.
Yeah.
Sorry. District Alexander mentioned Sheriff Baldwin. And one he mentioned, which I think is one of a really cool contract, is a situation where we contract with the Western Vector Control. It's a district situation, but they handle all of our vector issues. And as you know, some of you live in a certain area, vector issues can be a big deal. And many cities pay a visit to the Climate JPA, so they handle that. Again, we don't have to have people trained in that. We don't have to supply the pesticides and all that stuff. So that's the value of having a contract. We're always looking at services that might be contracted out, and we have to compare the cost of how it's being handled by city employees. We have amazing employees, and if we were in a contract for a service, it would have to be shown that it could be done with the same quality that we're getting for less money. And again, our employees are so good, most of them are way above and beyond what the money, I think, what the money is paying for. So we have not changed any of the contracts recently. But when a contract comes up for renewal, that comparison's made again to see if that's the best way to go. It may be that at this time, whatever the contract may be, that at this time the city is better off to provide the services. But the big major services, when the city was incorporated, those were brought in because the city was not in any way, shape, or form prepared to handle those kinds of things, such as waste removal and vector control and sheriffs being a contract for us, which I agree they did a wonderful job, but I would never, ever think that we could do a better job than the sheriffs have done for us. So, yeah, we're a contract city, and we're always aware that there might be a better contract out there, but we take great care to make sure it's looked at very carefully.
Dr. Kennedy.
Would you like to repeat the question for the audience?
The question is, are there any city services that you believe could be outsourced to private entities to achieve better results or cost savings?
Without going through the list of current contracts that are outsourced, I will tell you what criteria are used when determining as a superintendent whether or not I'd be outsourcing any particular service. First of all, I looked at cost savings, of course. The second, that was alluded to by Mrs. Williams and Mr. Alexander, is quality control and oversight. If it costs more man hours to ensure that those services or that product is of high quality than we're actually paying, then it no longer is cost effective. So you need to look at cost and efficacy as well as quality of the services being outsourced. And the third component is to make sure that it does not impact or fall under the purview of existing labor contracts. So a perfect example of what we have that has been mentioned in terms of outsourcing is our sheriff's department and our trash industry and pickup. Those are all well done, cost effective, and with high quality, and are under or within the scope of city rights and management.
Mr. Yes.
Folks, this is a subject that I actually taught to Middle Eastern professors and also those in Latin America. The subject is GIS, Geographic Information Systems. We spend over $500 million a year that could be outsourced at a fraction of its cost to private industry. We could reduce our financial burden of payroll, taxes, overtime, and pensions. Changes in my point by many cities and public entities. I mentioned to you the city of Santa Monica has outsourced GIS. Inland Empire Utility Agency has also done the same thing, as well as the Orange County Sanitation District. These folks all estimated made their estimates, and they turned it over to private industry. Numerous small engineering firms can handle the Rancho Cucamonga's GIS needs and requirements without any problem. Example, GIS training over the last couple of months measured $24,000 to send the people to a training program that wasn't necessary. They put them up in the hotel in San Bernardino for that $24,000. That's wasteful expenditures of money. Somebody's not looking after the house yet. In other words, if we continue spending like this, we're going to put ourselves in a bankruptcy situation. So here's GIS that we can outsource at a fraction of the cost. Next, I would take on our fire departments, or our fire department units. We've come to the point where we have to deal with this on a very strong basis. We have to sit up and pay attention, make some hard decisions. I would transfer fire departments over to the county of San Bernardino. This would eliminate payroll tax, insurance, pension programs, and keep us from going into bankruptcy in the near future. Because this is what's happening. This overtime that we're spending is a game that's being played out, and the city is being built. We got to stop it. We got to initiate new policies and procedures. If we're going to retain the fire departments, or we ship off to the county of San Bernardino, where they can still do the same job. And they can't say they won't do the job because they know it's got to be done here in the city. They've got their plans and policies as far as services for the city and emergency services. So that's what I would do with that. Last, I would take on the cable TV industry services, conduct a review of current supplier services and rates, issue RFPs based upon clear and understandable bid specifications, refuse collections for the year 2000 and 2015, issue clear and defined bid specifications with special terms and conditions. This thing with Bertel is nothing but sweetheart contract, folks. Review current insurance brokerage rates and issue RFP for services as well. Thank you.
Mr. Jimenez.
So Mr. Bell has already went through the list of the stuff we outsource. But just so you guys know my philosophy behind outsourcing, I'm not a big believer of it. The whole idea of taking a service that is provided by a dedicated city employee or employees and giving it to a for-profit entity who's a contractor for the city, who's really their business, so their bottom line is to make money, so they're going to find ways to cut the cost. So what they're going to end up doing is reducing service and reducing wages for the workers that work for that entity. So at the end, all of us lose, because if we outsource some services, we're not going to get the same quality of services, and that company is going to find ways to pay the workers less, which means the workers in our community are going to have less disposable income to invest in our community and provide for their families. That's it.
Mr. Hanlon.
Outsourcing of the service workers was brought up more than once. And they went union because they're terrified of the management stepping on it. And they were terrified of losing their jobs, and some of them have been working here for 20, 30 years. I don't see that as a positive thing. We're going through some tough times. Tough times call for tough decisions, not waste. I believe what Mr. Mattis said was true. We are currently drowning in top management salaries, retirement pay, and the cycle shows no end. It's not going to stop, and the only way it's going to stop is when the newspapers tell us we're like Bell, California. Tough decision is to contract out the city manager, the assistant city manager, and the 2 deputy city managers to start. Cut their salary by 2/3, all benefits, everything, they get 2/3, and we'll have 1,000 people applying for those jobs. Next, we go toward the upper management, who, by the way, are averaging $204,000 a year that we're paying out. How much have you? And by the way, that adds up to more than 90% salary plus benefits. It's ridiculous. This alone would have a huge effect on our payroll. It would have a huge effect on our benefits package, our liabilities. It would have a tremendous effect on morale, because these people, and believe me, I've been to companies where they outsource, real companies, not silly. And let me tell you, these people come in to work, to help show profit, and to earn the money.
The next question will begin with Dr. Kennedy. Dr. Kennedy, what changes to the city municipal code would you pursue and why?
Codes and policies are meant to be fluid and living documents that change according to the demographics and the needs of an organization. And so I will begin by looking at those that address our businesses and whether or not they are business-centered, business-friendly, and encourage new businesses and prevent barriers for opening or fees that would be barriers to any new businesses coming into our city. So I would look at those, and I would seek the input from the chamber as well as businesses, and be responsive to that input and that feedback, and make changes accordingly.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Changes I would make to both the code as well as the policy and procedures. First of all, I require that the misdemeanor code prosecution case be reviewed by the city attorney and voted upon by the city council. The emphasis is on use of community services in order to be, I think, more sensitive to the needs of our people. Seeing a photograph of the disabled veteran trying to mow his lawn that he cannot do is something that he should be prosecuted for. That I would change. Review of code enforcement policies and meeting with cited constituents to discuss the issues. That's sensitivity. Revise Friendship Cucamonga City Council budget review process. And I want to show you right here. The budget review process begins right here. But that's where the Rancho Cucamonga City Council should be involved in. Not down here as a rubber stamp, because that's where they give the budget and not approve it. So, the flow chart and the council had estimated the section not to be the rubber stamp at the very end. And I would repeal the following. Resolution 14-076, adopting a charge to review candidate statements. I think it's discriminatory, it's burdensome, and it's akin to the old South's old crow type policies. They're going to champion it. They said, well, we have the authority under the code, under the election code. They have the authority, but you don't have to carry that through. And that's how I saw this discriminatory statement. I thought it was just nothing but old crow, Jim Crow. Common sense should stick with the city council when it represented, and this was represented by the city attorney as well. Resolution 14-179, city clerk's estimate, and refuge and recycling estimate should be repealed. Sweetheart contracts and improper city administrative support for private industries must end. Order a review of unbudgeted city reserves to be paid back to the taxpayers. You are the people that I want to represent, the taxpayers. And that's my final objective. I figure if I can sit on the council a couple of years, a couple of terms, I'll get that accomplished. Thank you.
Mr. Emmons.
Well, there's a couple minor things that I would like to change, and then I'll go into the bigger picture that I want to change. For those of you guys who don't know, we currently have a parking fee down at the Veterans Station. We are the only city in the whole San Bernardino County that has a parking fee for people that want to catch the train. We should be promoting public transportation. It's not just about what's practical, but it's also about our future. We need to start moving into more environmental sounds of getting environmental sound ways to get around. And by having an extra fee on public transportation, you're not really encouraging folks on moving that direction. So that would be the first one. The second one, we are very harsh on the business community when it comes to signage. We really force the code when it comes to people putting signs out on the street, but then all of a sudden, every 2 years when we have elections, it's a free-for-all. It's okay to class every corner, well, with campaign signs, and let's face it, that's really ugly. I would obviously limit the size of the signs, limit the size of the signs, and also limit the amount you can put out. And maybe just ban it from public cross streets altogether. The bigger picture is we need some type of municipal election code reform. We really need to look at our elections. We need to consider district representation in our city. We are made up of 3 distinct communities, Rwanda, Oklahoma, and the Old Cucamonga. I think we would get a broader representation in our city council if we had districts. It's something that we should be considering. Something I mentioned earlier, campaign contribution. We need to limit the amount people give to our candidates so that we don't have just a small group of people dictating what happens in our city. And we also should be considering term limits. I think there's a lot of people in our community, myself, who are trying to just bring our ideas and contribute to our community, and it's just impossible. Because let's face it, if you look at Congress, if you look at state houses, if you look at local politics, the power of incumbency is really powerful. It is hard to get rid of incumbents. So if we're serious about changing our city council and moving forward in our community and building a community that my daughters are going to feel proud of, 20, 30 years from now, we need to change the way we do our local elections. Thank you.
For the benefit of our audience, the current question is, what changes to the city municipal code and why? Mr. Hamlin.
Thank you. Well, we have a number of them that we call silly and ridiculous. Let me go over one. We have a municipal code that has signs up on bus stops for non-smoking. And the day they were put in, the mayor at the time said, we're not going to enforce it, and that's in the newspaper. Why have something that's silly? We have Municipal Code 849 and 851, which limits the amount of people who can protest as their right under the First Amendment. Why? Because somebody doesn't want them there. It's not going to work. And even at the council meetings, people got up, and not people from our city, but people got up from all around San Bernardino and said, hey, this is not a good idea. It should not be in. The city should not face civil matters if it comes to that and stand behind bad decisions. Both of those were bad decisions. And I have to agree. We have council members at large. That means nobody's responsible to you, the voter. They're responsible to anybody, and they can always say, it was his fault. No offense, no. But that's how it works. If we have districts, then somebody can stand up and say, this is not fair to my district. LD 2 has a problem. They gave money a year ago. After 2 elections, after 2 votes, they gave money. Nothing has been done with it. We went to a meeting, and we were told, well, if we need more, we'll just go out and get more. We were shown designs and no presentation. Had we had a member on the council who was a stand up and said, this is your district, you better start standing up, then I'm sure that we would have had better representation of the voters. And you guys have to step up and say, we have to stop this at-large, good old voice law. Thank you.
Mr. Alexander.
Well, this has received a lot of really good comments, and probably a lot of them are pretty accurate. For those of you who don't know, the municipal code is over 900 pages long, so good luck in trying to figure the darn thing out. It's very, very difficult. Unfortunately, its effect, I think, is minimal on some and maximum on others. Although it's difficult to decipher, keep in mind that those individuals in the community who have to comply with the municipal code are the everyday paying citizen, and the one that usually is the businessman who is faced with knowing every single one of these codes, and even worse, when someone comes down and tells you you have violated it, and this has been addressed before, we wind up being punitive as opposed to understanding and trying to help people in the community. Too many times, too many folks have gone through a very difficult time. Some may threaten to lose their house in some cases if they don't comply. Some being told they'd be arrested for an infraction, not even a misdemeanor. It becomes somewhat intolerable. And I think that's sad. And it only happens once, it's too many times, but it's happened numerous times. It does make review, and though they're not saying it all the time, I've had members of the business community come to me. We keep priding ourselves in being business friendly. I understand we should be business friendly. And openly, many businesses say we are friendly. Privately, many have a reluctant voice in saying, I'm having a difficult time getting through City Hall. I'm having a difficult time with the inspection process. I'm having a difficult time in meeting certain deadlines. I want some understanding, and that's a fair request. It's a very fair request. We have to be a little bit more understanding in these economic times of the difficulties people are going through. And I don't care if it's a businessman going through difficulty or someone having a difficult time keeping his lawn green. This community has to look at the times we're in right now. And a 900-page document sometimes doesn't mean a whole lot if you're having to move out of your home.
Mrs. Williams.
Well, the municipal code is indeed a living document. It's not, it never stands still. In our city, it's looked at, I think it's almost by law. It's looked at, it's different portions are looked at almost every 6 months, and things are addressed that are obsolete to the state, changing their codes or whatever. Keep in mind, many of our codes are dictated by the state, by the master, whatever it is. Anyway, they're dictated by the state. But anyway, the codes are looked at for clarification. They're tweaked a little bit sometimes. The main thing that can be done, I think, is if someone has identified an area that is really difficult to deal with, that's really causing their business a lot of difficulty, or in general. And by the way, 10 years ago, but as late as that, we did have a lot of complaints about how difficult it was to work through the city. Businesses, developers were complaining about the strict, stringent codes we had. And once their business was open, and they came and said, you know, my business is doing better here than it's done in any other city, partly because we maintain the quality. And I'm not going to take any, I'm not embarrassed for that at all. That's what Rancho Cucamonga has established. If we let all those codes go, we may as well go south of the border and live down there, because that's what Rancho Cucamonga is about, making sure that you know what's expected. And we've implemented lots of new software, so businesses have a much easier time. You can sit in your jammies and your fuzzy slippers and apply for permits. We've tried to make it as easy to do all that. Anyway, and should anyone identify a situation that's really a problem, bring it to us. We'll sit down, we'll set up some staff here, we'll go through it. Sometimes it's a misinterpretation of the code. So right now, I don't know any code that I think is punitive. Again, sometimes it's interpretation, sometimes it's not the code at all. It's a whole other subject.
Now we'll come time for the concluding remarks. Concluding remarks will run from the right to the left, so we'll be starting with Mr. Nunez.
I may have to get a new car.
I have learned how to follow, and I know how to lead. And make tough decisions without making working my path. I've had some major accomplishments in my career. One was passage to the U.S. Congress, a major legislation dealing with the amendments to the Mine Safety and Health Act of 1982. That work resulted in savings of approximately 150,000 jobs across the United States, at least 6,000 jobs here in the state of California. And that was supported by the Building and Construction Trades of the AFL-CIO. I came to work with the Department of Innovation with the entire backing of the AFL-CIO as a result of my activities in legislation like this. I also prosecuted those in the entertainment industry after the Twilight Zone tragedy. So I made some touchy decisions in my day. But my greatest achievement, I thought, was being the chief opponent on the LNG2 gas rate increase. Many of those here have seen that I can be very tough on people who treat others with little regard to their concerns. I have no regard for those who ignore the vote of the people, which is the basis of our democracy. Which continues to protect, with sacrifice, those who have proudly served our country, and especially those who have paid the ultimate price. I'm a Jeffersonian politician. I say stick with Vic. On November 4th, I won't let you down. I have no special interest in showing me, and I am accountable only to you, the taxpayer. I'll give results if you let me into office. My candidate is supported, and I am endorsed by the former mayor and current city councilman in the city of 29 Palms, the 5-term mayor in the city of La Mirada, Mr. Dave Peters, and also a former city manager, Mr. Adolfo Herrera, in the city of Monterey Park. Thank you, folks. Appreciate yours.
Dr. Kennedy.
Leadership matters. There's a book that's titled The 21 Laws of Leadership, and the very first chapter addresses the law of the lid. It explains that an organization, a city, a school, a district, a business, a city will never ever rise above the highest level of leadership. If your leadership is a 7, then your city will be a 6. Therefore, you must be intentional about the leaders you select. You cannot leave it to status quo or chance. You can't stay the same and grow. You can't have what you've always had and be forward thinking. I will bring you leadership for the future. I will bring you ideas, proven leadership and experience, a skill set that will take the city to the next level. You don't have to be sick to get better, but you do have to know better to do better. And I will bring the knowledge and the skill set for this community, for our community, for our families, to build a stronger, better Rancho. Thank you.
Mrs. Williams.
First, I want to make a couple of clarifications. Our city's GIS department actually does contract. We contract to other cities and other entities and other agencies. They come to us, they pay us to do the work for them. So we're very proud of that accomplishment with our skilled workforce doing that. It's quite an accomplishment. Also, our library has done the same thing. They have created play and learn items that they're selling at $10,000 a pop. Every time they go to a conference, they sell some more of these. So we're doing a little bit of enterprising out there for ourselves. We have never had an unbalanced budget in Rancho Cucamonga, and we never will, certainly as long as I'm on the council. We have been very stringent with our reserves. We do not spend one-time money on ongoing operations. We've always been very careful. And also, we never start a project unless we know we can fund it. So that's why we're not near bankruptcy. That's why we're one of the most solid cities in the state. So I'm very proud of my accomplishments in that. I'm proud of my record to be part of that. I'm a very fiscally conservative person, and I would be honored to be returned for another 4 years to continue my work.
Mr. Alexander.
Well, first of all, let's get probably one thing straight. Nobody's villainizing any employee or employee group in City of Rancho Cucamonga. A council does have to take responsibility for the amount of money spent and the amount of benefits given. And I people exiting the community, if there are adjustments made, we need to get that on the table right now. You stated earlier that somebody didn't look into, even carefully enough in purchasing $1 million fire truck. You have no idea how much anguish that the council did go through in that purchase and still needed a necessity. Our employees are the best. Our employees are the very best. However, the ones at the lower level have suffered for years. While some haven't suffered, some have had a difficult time going to Victoria Gardens or anyplace else because they have no disposable income. And they do need to be helped. Quickly, I want to go ahead and read something that I read. I'm going to have to give the gentleman credit because I know it's illegal if I don't. His name was Stephen Hens. He's a tax collector of Ventura County, California, and a former Superior Court judge. I'll go through it quickly. He told people, and I couldn't agree more, I'm committed to tell the truth always, to keep my promises, talk less, listen more. Take all the blame and share all the credit. Practice humility, patience, and optimism. Finally, he said, and I couldn't agree more, I believe in the United States would be a better place and citizens better off if governments were smaller, less intrusive on our daily lives. We have become so accustomed to having the government tell us how to live that we are at risk of suffocating creativity, independence in exchange for a mess of government pottage. It is my idea of the American way, and I couldn't agree more.
Mr. Hanlon.
Tonight, you've heard from two groups. The incumbents, who are leading you down the current path, and the challengers, who believe that we can make a difference. I have to be one of the challengers. If you believe for a moment that the challengers, what they have to say has merit, then act accordingly. If you because we're just like you. We're businessmen, we're family people, and we truly care about Rancho Cucamonga. Otherwise, we wouldn't be up here. We don't take any backing from unions, trash companies, or special interest groups, nor do we trash the corners with political signs during this election period. If the incumbents are your cup of tea, then you'll go along with trashing our corners, you'll go along with eliminating the small guy, as they've done continually. You go along with stopping volunteers doing good work for our city. You have my word on one thing and one thing alone. I will represent the voter, not the good old boys club. Thank you.
Mr. Jimenez.
I need the last word. That's the youngest person also. So I'll make it quick. How about that? You heard from all six of us now. You know where we're coming from. You know what we're bringing to the table. You know what our political philosophies are. Out of the youngest person on this table, my family, we have the most to gain from good decisions of the City Council, but we also have the most to lose from bad decisions from the City Council. I ask you guys to invest in the future Rancho Cucamonga, and I humbly ask for your vote. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a 10-minute recess. We are probably, almost assuredly going to go slightly past 9. I apologize for that, but as reflects their professionalism, all of our candidates have used almost every second awarded to them. Please, in the same format that we've been following this evening. 2 minutes for introductions, 3 minutes to respond to questions, and then 2 minutes to conclude. We will be starting with Mr. Michael. Mr. Michael.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to just share with you how happy I am once again that the Chamber of Commerce is holding this candidate forum to allow our public opportunity to determine who they want to vote for on November 4th. My name is Dennis Michael. I'm the mayor for the city of Rancho Cucamonga and a very proud mayor for a very wonderful city. My background, I was born and raised in this city. I've spent my whole life, 67 years, giving back to this community, and I continue to do so. And just after graduating from high school and attending Chaffey College, I joined the Air National Guard, spent 16 years in the Air National Guard wearing the uniform of the United States Air Force. After concluding that time, I also joined the Rancho Cucamonga Fire Department. Back then it was Foothill Fire Protection District. I promoted through the ranks and served as the city's fire chief for 19 years until my retirement in December of 2003. Thereafter, I ran for city council in 2004 and had the fortunate opportunity to be elected to office again in 2008 when I finished my first term, and then in 2010 I was elected mayor. My priorities are going to be your priorities, and they always will be. Maintaining and improving public safety services, our fire, our police, our emergency preparedness, as well as our animal care and animal control divisions. Small businesses are a huge priority for me. Our small business community is the backbone of our city, and I can tell you that economic development is an incredible, huge priority for this city and this city council. And lastly, and probably most importantly, the fiscal responsibility and the fiscal sustainability for the future of this city. It was mentioned earlier, we may be suffering potential bankruptcy. I am here to tell you, our city has never been more fiscally sound. In fact, during my leadership, our city was awarded the highest credit rating it's ever received any time in the history of our community, and we did that during a recessionary period. That is because we have very sound reserves and a very healthy and careful workforce that works together with the city in partnership to bring the great services that we have in this community. Thank you.
Mr. Moffitt.
Good evening. My name is Jim Moffitt, and I'm a resident of Rancho Cucamonga since 1972. I am a very successful businessman. I am a veteran of the United States Air Force on active duty from 1952 to 1956, 4.5 years active. I was in during the Korean conflict, but I make it very clear, I never got to Korea. That's one of the reasons I joined. But the reason I'm running for mayor is we need a change. Too many things are being swept under the rug and not being addressed. We are not a business-friendly city. We rank 49th, where Fontana ranks 4th. They say we're business-friendly. If you've ever had somebody come in and inspect your building, you would be really surprised of the nitpicking that they do. And it's also, when the code enforcers come around to homes, they treat people like criminals. When they walk in and threaten people that they're going to fine them or put them in jail because their lawns are messy, there's something wrong with this picture. And it's time for a change. Thank you.
Our first question, many have commented on what appears to be a lack of development improvements in the western and southern portions of the city as compared to the northeastern portions. Do you see such a disparity? And if so, how would you address this issue? Mr. Meyer.
Yes, there is a disparity when you look at the western versus the eastern portion, and that disparity occurs because prior to incorporation, this city was being developed under County of San Bernardino standards. And one of the biggest reasons why we became a city in 1977 was to stop the kind of development that we saw for many years on the western side of the city. And if you remember back to 1977, there was little development east of Haven. So we were able as a city to develop a general plan to provide for an incredibly well-planned, two huge planned communities, Victoria and Terra Vista, as well as a beautiful lifestyle center in Victoria Gardens. We have some challenges on the west side, but we're doing wonderful things. We're starting to build, we got a state grant to build the first park in southwest Rancho Cucamonga. We are working along 4th Street down in the southern portion of our city to bring new businesses in. Along by the golf course, we have a potential for transit-oriented development. We also are working very diligently along the Foothill Boulevard corridor to bring in mixed-use development in our community. And I really believe over time, we will be able to make Rancho Cucamonga. One of my visions is when you drive out Foothill Boulevard, you still see no difference between the eastern side of our community or the western side of our community. We've got some really great opportunities, and a lot of people are desiring to locate in Rancho Cucamonga. And one of the things that I want to stress is that we are looking for e-commerce kind of warehousing opportunities in the industrial portion of the southern part of our city that's been developed. So we're extremely happy with what's going on. Unfortunately, the state of California took away our redevelopment agency that was the economic engine to redevelop areas along Foothill Boulevard that one would consider to be blighted. But I know of a few things that are in the plans to develop some very wonderful projects on Foothill as well as in the southern portion of our city. So I would rest that there is no doubt that history is the main reason why you see a disparity between the western and the eastern part of the city. And I would tell you, as a mayor and a lifelong resident of this city, I don't know of a better city that you could locate in than the city of Rancho Cucamonga. And that comes from a lot of hard work from a lot of councils, past, present, and those of the future. We have a vision, and we've never left that vision, and we are so very, very committed to making sure that our general plan is the jewel of the Inland Empire. Thank you.
Mr. Moffett.
Yes, I don't really see a disparity. I know when I moved here in 1972, the only thing was on the west end was Red Hill Country Club, Sunrise Shopping Center, and Cora Homes was coming in and building homes, and they were building them towards the west end because it was closer to Los Angeles. So over the years, as they started to move east, like the mayor said, Victoria Gardens, well, where else would they have put it? They have to go out that way. So in the future of today and tomorrow, you're going to see more growth on the east because there isn't any growth on the west coast anymore. The west side. It's pretty well built out. This city is 80% built out today. So we have 20% left. And I'm not sure if we have a city plan because I haven't had the opportunity to research it. And I'm saying if we have a city plan, then we should look at it right now and not build Foothill along just to have buildings. If we're going to have parks, then they should be where we can afford them. If they're going to have construction zones, we should have the right place, not just build them to build them. It's too important that we want to leave our future generations something beside the cement jungle. Thank you.
Our next question, what can the city do to replace the funds previously generated through the redevelopment agencies? Mr. Moffett.
That's a very difficult question right now because of the fact the economy, the way it is, and states that are taking our money and they're doling it back. Well, right now, money is tight in the state, in the city, in the federal government. So they're not giving the money back, so we can't just say, just give us more money, we're going to go build. And what would I do? I would curtail all buildings until we can afford it. I would not go out and spend money on things that are unnecessary today. And when things loosen up and we got the funds back from the state, our tax money, folks, our money, and we give it back, then it's time to start expanding again. But until that time, we should tighten our belts. Thank you.
Mr. Moffett.
Yes, I would say that the loss of redevelopment agency is going to be manifest itself in economic growth and economic development. Creating businesses that bring in good paying jobs and businesses that bring in a tax base that can allow our city to continue to provide the various amenities that we all enjoy today. We lost redevelopment, that's a thing of the past. If anybody thinks the state of California is going to come back and give us money, it's just not going to happen. They're insatiable about taking our monies. And finally, we have a relationship that we have established in the legislature for the first time in years through the League of California Cities. And I'm very proud to let everybody know that back in September, I was elected the second vice president of the executive board for the League of California Cities at their annual conference in Los Angeles. They did that because they believe in my abilities in the role of leadership. And I can assure you that our city is doing an incredible job of working to bring in wonderful businesses, e-commerce, as I mentioned earlier, in the warehousing sector, where we will be the point of sales for sales tax generation. We have attracted some incredible businesses. We have our city's first microbrewery, where now another microbrewery is considering locating here. Amphastar Pharmaceuticals, we have Light Manufacturing, we have Evolution Fresh, and some other incredible industries that have chosen Rancho Cucamonga to move to. Another big business, over 1,000 jobs. Inland Empire Health Plan, IEHP, located in the old General Dynamics building. They've really brought in a tremendous amount of job growth. Job growth means people are going to want to live in their houses, and we need to make sure that our development still provides for affordability at every income level in our city, and we've worked hard to do that. So I really do believe that one other thing that I might mention is that our city has had an economic development strategy for the past 10 years. And this year, by the end of this year, we will revise our 10-year into the future economic development strategy. And the City Council will be either at the end of this year or the first part of next year going forward with the knowledge that we no longer have the greatest economic development tool and engine in the form of a redevelopment agency. It's gone, and it's going to be gone forever. But as second vice president, we're going to work with our state legislature to bring new tools to local government throughout this state to make sure that the legislature gives us a new opportunity to create things similar to a redevelopment agency, but not look the same. Thank you.
My third question for this evening is, what is the best way to preserve the city's history without costly or protracted disputes, such as occurred with the China House on San Bernardino Road? Historical value, yes, but it's extremely dilapidated. What's the best way for the city to handle these issues going forward? Mr. Michael.
Yes, you know, our historic preservation is critically important to the city, and it has been for many years, but we have lost opportunities to preserve some very, very special structures, such as the China House and all the issues that came along with that. Our city redid our general plan in 2010. We revised our historic preservation ordinance that had never before been revised to the point where we are now requiring a property owner to maintain and not allow any further degradation of a historical building. That occurred under my leadership as mayor. I've lived in this city my entire lifetime. I care deeply about the opportunities we have for historic preservation. But the key component for me is community engagement, community involvement, community partnerships. One partnership that I will share with you is the nonprofit organization that's taken control and got the property from a billboard company, the old Richfield gas station on Foothill Boulevard, that as a child I rode with my father's pickup truck to go get fuel oil for the smudge pots in the orange grove that he had. And I can tell you that those kinds of facilities, we are committed to working and partnering with our nonprofits as best we can. Another wonderful example is the Friends of the Pacific Electric Trail. There is a depot just on the east side of Etiwanda Avenue, right along the Pacific Electric Trail, that has been worked on by our fire department. They boarded it up and protected it. And the organization, the Friends of the Pacific Electric Trail, just met with me just this past week. They're meeting with each council member to talk about their vision for that facility. And the ideas and the things that they're talking about are incredibly exciting. So I really do think historic preservation is important. It can't all be done by government. It has to be done by a community that's engaged. We do a lot of work in trying to get revenues for historic preservation and helping, in particular, along the historic houses on Etiwanda Avenue, the Rains House, the Isles House, those facilities and those homes that have been icons in this community for decades. And we have done that by using community development block grant, federal government funds that we get every year. We allocate a portion of our CDBG funds to help restore and continue to improve those structures.
Mr. Moffett.
I find that interesting when Mr. Mayor said in 2010 they passed a law that the property owner should maintain the property. Well, nothing has been done at that China House for over 4 years. It's fenced off. It sits there. Nothing gets done. And I look at it this way. The Chinese people who were the candy dancers here, way back when they were building the railroad, some of them lived there, and downstairs there was a little store, and it was run by Chinese people. This is their heritage, and they want to protect it because it is probably the only Chinese bastion in the whole city or in the whole Inland Empire. And if these people want to honor some of their heritage, they should have the opportunity, providing that they follow the rules on supporting it up and building it up, and having an engineer go in and look at the structure and see if it is salvageable as it is today, or does it have to be torn down and start from scratch. You see the tiles up there as you walk over there, and those are just tiles that are sitting there. They're not part of the structure. If the Chinese people want to come together with the water department and purchase that and get an okay to build their monument for their heritage, I see nothing wrong with that. After the Gandhi dancers and the railroad was built, many of the Chinese people stayed and became becerros, but they, in the Spanish neighborhood, was picking grapes and pecans and stuff, and they became American citizens, and their children became American citizens also. So they're part of the heritage here in Rancho Cucamonga, like it or not. And I think the way to resolve it is to bring the water board together and the Chinese contingency together and see if they can work something out and get a structural opinion on it and see if it is viable to fix. And because it is their heritage and they are entitled to it as well as we are, such as the Rain House and the Christmas House and other structures in Rancho Cucamonga, that is our heritage for our future generations. Thank you.
It's now time for our candidates' concluding remarks. We'd like to start with Mr. Moffett.
Okay. So I got a couple minutes. The reason I'm running for city council is I feel we need a change. And I'll give you some of the reasons. Number one, they have not resolved the issue in the animal shelter for 2 years. They swept it under the rug. Now it is the staff's and the council's responsibility to resolve problems, not sweep over the rug and let them go. Number two, Heritage Park. Because they didn't go along with the city, they locked their bathrooms. For spite, we'll fix you. You guys don't go along with us. We're going to lock your bathroom. Your bathrooms are done. Number three, wages. Lower echelon wages in Rancho Cucamonga for the people who do the hard labor, mowing the lawns, fixing the streets, have not got the raise in over 4 years, as was stated with the council meeting. But yet, top management. City manager makes more than the governor. He's got an assistant, and he's got 2 deputies. And he works 4 days a week. Plus, he gets a $600 a month gasoline. I will cut the gasoline benefits too. If people want to get elected and they want to run for office and serve this city, well, damn it, they can pay for their own gas. I will pay for mine. I will not take that money. And another thing is the codes. We have to resolve our codes and stop sending out code enforcers that act like Gestapo. This is not the way we treat our residents and our citizens who built this city. I think it's time that we look at the whole picture and we bring this city back to realization that The staff works for you, not we work for the staff with our tax money. We pay their salaries. They should do what is expected of them. Thank you.
Mr. Michael.
Yes, thank you. I can truly tell you that it's been an honor and privilege to serve as your mayor these past 4 years. You know, you're hearing a lot of things tonight, but I will assure you, I love the city of Rancho Cucamonga, and I love the direction that it's headed. I take this responsibility very seriously, and I work hard to make sure the city remains the jewel of the Inland Empire. I have a proven track record of leadership, and I'll just share a couple of quick examples. I'm now the San Bernardino Associated Government's president. It is made up of 24 cities and 5 board of supervisors, and they chose me as vice president last year and as president to lead that organization. I also in 2013 received the prestigious James Baldwin Award for public service and furthering the cause of local government. I don't do these things because I need to spend more time away from home. I do them because it makes me a better mayor, both regionally and on a statewide basis. I have contacts throughout the state of California that can help Rancho Cucamonga with new innovative ideas and new terms and methods. Also, and something that's very important to me that during my term is we have received national, statewide, and regional recognitions never before achieved by the city of Rancho Cucamonga. And that happens not because of the city council, it happens because of the city council that allows the staff to be as innovative and as creative as possible. So anybody that stands up here and talks about salaries and everything else has got it wrong. And I will say one last thing, that one of the things that I'm very happy about is what we did for the business community in this city during my term as mayor. When I was first elected mayor, we decided we were going to eliminate all the bureaucracy and the plan check review process. We were going to streamline systems and the programs and revise our development code that hasn't been revised in decades. We did the whole thing, and now I will tell you, when a businessman comes to do business in Rancho Cucamonga, they are saying thank you for the wonderful job that your staff are doing. And lastly, in conclusion, you have my commitment to continue to work hard to assure Rancho Cucamonga remains a wonderful, beautiful place to live, raise a family, own a business, and work. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your kind attention tonight. This concludes our candidates forum.